In this session, we're going to look at why business need is so important to successfully implementing change. This diagram is not examined in the Agile Change Agent certification, but I thought it would be helpful to think about benefits and business need from a perspective of what it does for us when we're trying to manage a change. If you look at the top of the diagram, we're talking about business case. We know that in iteration 1 of the roadmap, we're going to establish a business case that makes the case for why the change should be authorised, why budget should be committed to the change. So in there, we're going to put in the benefits, possibly drawn from our benefits dependency network, where we're going to try to work out all of the different benefits that we are going to achieve. We're also going to set that against the costs. So that will give us the reason why the change should be authorised. But from the perspective of the business need section of this course, I think we need to look at benefits from two other perspectives. On the left there, you can see coming out of business case, the benefits do something very important in that when it comes to the description of the change, also created in iteration 1, that's when we have our overarching scoping document. That's when we're saying what we will be changing and what we're going to exclude from the change. We come up with all of our ideas about what we're going to change, and we need to prioritise them because we can't do everything at once. And we need to work out what's going to come first. What will we deliver in iteration 2? What will we deliver in iteration 3 and 4 onwards, etc. So what we're going to do is we're going to prioritise that work by selecting the changes, the individual changes that create the greatest benefits. So actually, we're very interested in thinking about the advantages, the improvements, the benefits, the value, the business need that our change is going to deliver. And we're going to rank each of our change ideas to see which ones deliver the greatest value. On the right-hand side, something else is going on. We're actually looking at benefits from the perspective of how important they are for creating the motivation for those who will have to work in new ways, to actually practice those new ways of working, to abandon their old ways of working, and to take up the change as the new norm in their world. Now, if you're going to commit all of that effort, you need a lot of motivation. You need to feel that what you're doing is valuable, it's beneficial, it's advantageous. So again, we're looking at the benefits in a way that we will communicate them. So we're thinking about how we'll broadcast these to everybody, get everybody thinking about the improvements that they're going to achieve so that they feel motivated enough to take part in the change. And of course, once we have on the left there the description, the scope of the change, and we've got the communications that we need to think about, we draw that together as part of our change plan, which we've already looked at. It's the roadmap, each of the iterations that we're going to carry out, each wave of change. And once we understand that sort of roadmap that we're going to deliver, we can also think about the strategy, how we're going to be delivering it. So really, these are all the documents or the collateral, if you like, that we're going to create in iteration 1. And of course, we're going to be reviewing and updating as we move through each of the subsequent iterations. But I think it shows you how important it is that we really understand the benefits of the change. Now, business need isn't just benefits. The thing is, benefit is an improvement that's quantifiable and measurable. So if you like, it's the end result of what it is that we're achieving. Now, it would be helpful if we can think, well, if we want this end result, if we want to create this benefit, what's the quality of the work that we have to do? What are the minimum standards we need to meet? What exactly do we need to achieve in very clear terms that we can sort of say, yes, we've achieved it, or no, we haven't achieved it? And once we've understood that, then perhaps we should look at what the requirements are. The requirements are often a shopping list of features and functions and things we want. It should be able to do this, and I want that, and it should be in that colour, and oh, don't use that font size, and oh, I want that menu on the screen. So we come up with all of these wants. So here we have the 3 elements of business need, but actually they fit together. Benefits, that's where we should start. Once we understand the measurable improvements that we want to achieve, we should ask ourselves, what does good look like? What is it that we've got to deliver that we know would then create those benefits? And once we understand that bigger picture, the level of quality we've got to achieve, then we can think about all of the features and functions. It sounds really simple, but I think we've all been involved in initiatives that don't actually work this way. And that's because as human beings, we have a tendency to think much more about requirements because they're easier to identify, they're easier to articulate. We're very good at listing what we do want and what we don't want. It's much harder to step back from that list and consider, what will all of those features and functions do for me? What will they create? What will they lead to? What will be their result? Because to ask ourselves what the result is to identify the benefits. And that means stepping much further into the future, almost imagining that we've achieved those features and functions and now look around us and think, and what's the result? What's now happening that wasn't happening before? We tend to skip that step very often. So what happens is we end up with this problem called requirements-led change. It's also known as solutions-led change. What happens is we think about our current capability and what we want to be able to do in the future. And we start to list out all of the things that we might want to have. So if you imagine that I'm going to create a new website, I start to think of all the things that should be on the screen in front of me. I start to think of all the different pages of the website. And it makes me feel like I'm making real progress, because once I've identified all the pages that I want, I can start to think about those acceptance criteria. I start to think about what good looks like. So I start to think about how it's got to fit with the corporate look and feel of my organisation, or maybe some of the language we have to use, or how big the font has to be. And we start to explain that. We might create a specification, or we might do some demonstrations to show what we want. And then people get on and create it, and we implement that change. And then we might measure whether or not we've achieved any value from it. The problem with this approach is that we come up with all of our ideas, and we think each one of them's great. And we put that in place. So we end up doing lots and lots of work, irrespective of whether or not that work might actually lead to benefits. See, the thing is, what we should be doing is benefits-led change. So again, we look at the current and the future sort of capability, but what we do is we consider something completely different. We start to say, yes, but what would be a good result in the future? That might be a financial benefit. It might be a benefit in terms of customer engagement, staff engagement. It might be about regulatory compliance. It could be a dream we have of how streamlined our processes are going to be, or how many products we have in our product range. But we start to think about, what is it that we should be achieving? What does the end result look like? What have we done that's beneficial for the organisation? Once we've got that picture, then we can work out, we can ask ourselves, okay, so what does good look like? To what level of quality do I need to deliver things to make sure that we achieve this level of, let's say, customer satisfaction? We want our customers to always advise others to come to our company, to act as a reference point for us, to be totally delighted by our service. If that's the benefit that we want, we start to measure that benefit. We think about, what does totally delighted look like? We might use something like a net promoter score and set a measure that we want to now achieve. Once we have that concrete, measurable improvement, then we can start to look at, what is it that we need to deliver? To what level of quality do we deliver things to our customers to achieve that level of recommendation? And to be able to achieve that level of quality, what exactly are the features and functions that we need to deliver to actually make that happen? And then we end up with the specification, we implement the change, and then we can measure against the measurable improvement, the benefit. This requires a real shift in thinking, because instead of just doing that big shopping list of all the things you want, you have to step back and go, what would be a great result for us, and then put that in measurable terms. That is what benefits-led change is all about. Now, if we think about benefits, we need to think about who we're going to consult. Who do we ask to try to get the widest possible understanding of what the good result should be? So, of course, that takes us back to our community map, because we have to work collaboratively with everybody on there to try to work out what's the end result, what does good look like, the acceptance criteria, and then to consult on the features and functions. So again, we need to be thinking about who is involved in our change. And one of the reasons we need to consider who is involved is that if we want to get participation in making the change happen, we don't just need to identify the benefits, the measurable improvements for the organisation as a whole. We also need to take benefits to another level. What we need to do is help everybody who's going to participate in the change actually identify what are the benefits that mean something to me. Because if we want to get people involved, people have to feel that this is a good idea, that I want to be involved in this change, that this is the right change. So we talk about this idea of validity, this personal assessment, this individual assessment that we all make about whether or not what we're being asked to get involved in is actually the right thing, if it's a good idea. And we consider all sorts of things, don't we? We think about how useful the thing is that we're being asked to create. We think, well, is this a sensible answer? Is this logical? Is it a proportional response to the problems that we face? Is it something we can achieve? Is it practical? Is it pragmatic? And so the benefits, the acceptance criteria, and the requirements taken together, they give us a picture or a vision of the end result. When we communicate that to people, we must never lose sight of the fact that we need to communicate it in a way that really generates that sense of validity, that sense of personal rightness that people want to get involved in the change. So business need, considering those factors, helps us do two things. It helps us get the right change for the organisation, but it also helps us think about how do we generate the motivation and participation for people to create that change in the first place. Now, to bring this alive, what I want you to do is I want you to think about something where perhaps you've got personal validity. Identify a piece of work that you feel committed to undertaking. Now, it might be finishing this course. Think about all of the factors. How useful is it? How valuable is it? Is it relevant? Is it a practical thing to be doing? Why are you committed to doing this piece of work? So have a think about all of those different factors. Think about how strong your feelings are for completing the work, and then think about the effort you're prepared to commit to it. If you have personal validity, you'll feel that there's a lot of effort you're prepared to make. Alternatively, you might consider something that's really frustrated you, that you've been told to be involved in, but actually that personal validity is missing. You don't feel that it's the right change, and therefore you don't feel that it's a sensible idea, that you don't want to be involved in it. So equally, you could look at these factors from when personal validity is missing as much as when it actually exists.